Welcome to the Daybreak with Jeff Slakey podcast. I'm so happy you found us. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this with your circle of influence. It's a collection of the interviews, news, and conversation during Daybreak with Jeff Slakey on I-Fiber1 News Radio, KMAS, weekdays from 6 to 9. Good morning to you. Tuesday here as we get ready to wrap up the month of September. Spencer Hughes, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How's it going with you?
Good and excited. This week moves us into October. We're starting to look at Halloween decorations, and one of these days before too long, we'll have to have a chat about what's going to happen this Halloween. It's a Saturday. Kids and, well, me too, have been waiting 7 years, for it to be on a Saturday night. And, of course, 2020 rears its ugly head. And we're not sure what we're going to do about Halloween this year. If I decide to give out candy, then obviously I'll have masks and gloves on. But then I was listening to somebody on the news, and they were saying the kids, you'd have to almost disinfect all of the candy that somebody got.
Or just eat them all yourself.
You're touching it, you put it in your mouth, or you just eat them all yourself. But this is going to be a strange Halloween again, and I think a lot of folks want the kids to have a fun night. But at the same time, if by the end of the month we are close to what some of these medical experts are saying across the country and knee deep into perhaps a second wave of coronavirus, I don't know how it's going to look.
Yeah, it's interesting. People are creative, though, and I've seen a lot of videos, I'm sure you have too, from people, everything from using pulley systems across the lawn, from the front door to the kids so they don't even have to leave the curb, to chutes where they put the candy down the tube, and interesting things. I think it's mostly the chase the kids like, even if you don't let them eat the candy or if you throw the candy away or something. I know it's kind of wasteful, but it's just kind of the treasure hunt, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a fun day. It's a real... We'll see. We got a month till we get there. Today on the show, the Sheriff's Sit-Down, presented by our great friends at our Community Credit Union, Mason County Sheriff K.C. Salisbury and Chief Deputy Ryan Spurling. Also, lots of more local news and information to start your day. What's going on with the weather today? It's
going to be a very nice day. The rain is behind us for sure, and we're going to be mid to upper 70s most of the week. But today we're going to hit, actually today and tomorrow, 82, the expected high. They've kind of bumped it up a little bit. Wow, that is warm. Mason County Public Health notified of 12 additional Mason County residents testing positive for COVID-19, bringing the total now to 427 since March. More case investigations and contact tracing continues. Please do what you can to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in our community. Green Diamond Resource Company has announced that the company will open many gates accessing its working forest lands to the public for hunting and other recreation starting October the 1st. Public Affairs Manager Patty Case explained that in Western Washington, Green Diamond gates are typically orange with signs mounted next to them. We see these all over the place. We see them off the loop and all over Western Washington and Mason County. Recreation access permit areas are posted with signage explaining entry is limited to those with permits. Details and maps can be found on the company's website, greendiamond.com, under the Public Access tab. She also highlighted the importance of wearing high visibility clothing. Visitors must exit Green Diamond's forest land within 1 hour of sunset, and that's indicated in the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife's hunting regulations.
Well, tonight is a big night, and the stakes are getting higher and higher as the first of 3 presidential debates kicks off tonight from Cleveland. President Trump and Vice President Biden will have their time on the stage with Chris Wallace from Fox News as the moderator. 6 o'clock tonight, but our coverage begins at 5 with the hosts from ABC News doing some commentary beforehand and a little bit of debate analysis afterwards. The next debate here on the radio will be the vice presidential debate from Utah on October 7th.
The Washington State Department of Commerce announced $300,000 is now available for grants to shellfish growers impacted by declining exports and restaurant sales due to the pandemic. Local and global market demand for Washington's world-renowned shellfish has dropped dramatically since January. Some growers reporting revenue declines of 80 to 90% over last year. Washington is the leading U.S. producer of farmed oysters and clams. Commerce is partnering with the Washington State Department of Agriculture to fund the grants with $250,000 from the Working Washington Small Business Emergency Grant Program and $50,000 from the Washington State Department of Agriculture's Rural Rehab Program.
Boy, that's a big help out to a lot of shellfish growers and possibly for Mason County. So make sure you get that information. I think the EDC has links to that too on their website. Tomorrow's the last day for your nominations at masonchamber.com for the annual awards and nominations for the Chamber. Business of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Boss, Citizen, and Community of Supporter of the Year are the nominating categories. So again, masonchamber.com. Tomorrow at 5 is the deadline.
Democrats in the state legislature thought they had passed a routine sex education requirement for public schools, but a coalition of Republicans and religious conservatives launched a swift backlash that's led to a bitter partisan fight in an effort to overturn the measure on the November ballot. Democrats in our famously liberal state say they want to protect young people from sexual abuse and disease, but the outnumbered and aggrieved Republicans have taken issue with the content of the standards as they rally for local control. The resulting referendum marks the first time in the country that such a decision on sex education will be decided by voters.
Seattle Mariners believe they were ready to win by the end of 2020, but of course, with this shortened season, the Mariners wrap things up 27-33, although a springboard for next season when it hopes these young prospects will get the chance at a full season that can move the Mariners closer to contention next year or the year after. Seattle is likely 2 seasons away from rejoining the ranks of a legitimate contender in the AL, but they've got a bevy of talent, and it's always fun to hear the Mariners on the radio. Seattle Seahawks should be celebrating their 3-0 start after a 38-31 win over Dallas. First, the team has been undefeated after 3 games since 2013. That's the season that ended with a Super Bowl title. But while Russell Wilson is setting records throwing touchdowns, the Hawks' defense is struggling. More Seahawks football on the radio for you here this weekend, presented by Shelton Health and Rehab, Riviera's Shellfish, South Sound Appliance, Dogtown Grooming, Neil's Pharmacy, and the Shelton Athletic Club. And here's a fun one for us, a survey from petplace.com. What do you got for me?
Yes, we've talked about our relationships under quarantine with each other, our spouses, our kids, and even our pets. It's a new survey by petplace.com. 300 respondents surveyed, top 5 answers on the board. Oh, no, wait a minute. Sorry. 70% replied that they've loved having the extra time to spend with their furry companions as they work from home during the pandemic. Nearly all of the respondents are pet parents to dogs and cats, 41% stating that they're dog owners, 32% have cats, 22% have both. Despite the roller coaster of uncertainty during the pandemic, we were really heartened to see how many people have discovered a newfound gratitude and appreciation for their furry friends, says Hillary Young, Director of Brand Strategy for Pet Place. And for the pet owners who are returning to work, 24% of them said they are concerned that their pet may experience separation anxiety. Many pet owners also noted that their furry friends have helped de-escalate their anxiety during this crazy time.
Those last 2 I completely agree with. 24% concerned that their pet may experience separation anxiety. I'd say the other 76% or whatever the math works out to be probably hadn't thought about that because, I mean, if you're with any person or animal from limited amount of time to 24 hours a day, then back to limited amount of time, of course there's going to be some thoughts and concerns and wonders about what's happening and changes like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I know you've got a whole cadre of, it's like a zoo over at your place.
Noah's Ark. We're just waiting for the flood.
But have you noticed, I mean, you've got what I would consider non-traditional pets. Do you still have and feel the same kind of interactions and more looks upon them, or more pets, I guess, as opposed to the dogs and that you have at the house?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because I now share a space with the kids' bunnies and with a leopard gecko. So I've kind of become the adoptive parent because I'm in my studio so many more hours than I used to be. So I've kind of taken upon myself to feed them. The rabbits are a little different. Obviously, you don't cuddle with a leopard gecko and, treat it the same way a dog or a cat would be treated. But I'm realizing my responsibilities. I feed it, I clean out its tank. So it's kind of cool. I'm spending more time with animals that I normally wouldn't in the house.
So do you think that is bonding you to those animals?
Yeah, it really is. It is. Especially the geckos. I'm kind of a reptile guy. I used to be when I was younger, but the boys love reptiles. And at one point, we had everything from a chameleon. We still have bearded dragons in the house. Those are cool. But this guy, honestly, he was just kind of in the background, and it makes me kind of sad that I didn't pay as much attention to him all the time we've had him. But now we're kind of like roommates in this room for several hours a day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Again today on the show, Sheriff Sit Down, presented by our Community Credit Union. More conversations and news. Again, the debate tonight. Our coverage starts at 5 on AM 1030, FM 1033. Good morning to you.
From the iFiber One News Radio studios, you're listening to Daybreak.
Well, good morning, everybody. Jeff Slakey and Spencer Hughes on the Daybreak Show. Time for us to get a little more information from the Mason County Sheriff's Office during the Sheriff's Sit Down, presented by our great friends at our Community Credit Union. Chief Deputy Ryan Spurling, Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury. Hey, guys, how are you doing?
Morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, and good to see you both as we move into October here. Ryan, I know you are familiar with the ways that Washingtonians drive on the roadways. You spend a lot of time on the roads. Your time with the Sheriff's Office and your time with State Patrol. It seemed like in March, when we started shutting things down, very few people were out on the roads, and, well, maybe that gave some of those drivers a little bit of the feeling they could maybe go a little faster than they probably should. And now we're back into October. It's dark. More people are back on the roads, but I'm seeing a lot of collisions and things. So where are we at with numbers, and how can we remind folks to take it slow, especially as we move into the fall?
You know, there's probably so many pieces to this pie that it would be hard to nail it down to one thing, but across the United States, law enforcement has seen an increase in not only collisions, but increase in high speeds. I was reading a report just last week where multiple states have had the highest number of 100-plus speeding tickets, 100-mile-an-hour plus speeding tickets that they've ever had. So what is going into all this? It could be, like you said, some people got used to when the roads were empty. You know, there were memes out there, hey, if you're coming back to the road, now the new speed limit is 90,
yeah,
and all this other stuff, because they've been in gridlock for so many years, and then all of a sudden it's open, so they all went fast. That may be a factor to it. It could be as well that people are stressed, people are agitated, upset, in a hurry. I don't know, but I know specifically in our county, just in the last 3-4 months, we've had more fatalities than we've had in years before. We average about 1.5. It's weird to say that, but if you average it all out, it's about 1.5 fatalities a month for the last 3 or 4 years. This year, we're already at 7 fatalities. Wow. So this is a big year for fatality collisions. Some of it has to do with our traffic guys. When the COVID first came out, we told them not to stop unless it was pretty egregious because we didn't want the exposure. We still didn't know what we were dealing with. So some people may have gotten used to not having as much enforcement. And then we've been very busy, high call volume this year on the outskirts, such as up at Party Rock and all of the recreational areas. So those traffic guys are not on the county roads. And consequently, just in the last couple months, we've had 2 very, very tragic accidents, both involving very high speeds with fatalities in our county. So we've reassigned the deputies to get back out there and start doing the traffic enforcement, because we know that there's 3 things that influence collisions: engineering, education, and enforcement. So those are the 3 pieces that has always been there for trying to reduce traffic fatalities. Good engineering on the part of Public Works and Department of Transportation, good education, Traffic Safety Commission, and good enforcement, and that's our part. So our guys are getting back out there, kind of doubling their efforts. It's just as the summer surge call volume starts to reduce a little bit, they're going to be hitting the traffic a little more. just be aware of that.
And it seems too, Casey, over the summer that I hadn't seen as many of the emphasis patrols as well through State Patrol, for example. They would do a lot of these kind of, make sure we're going to be out in full force this weekend, or we're going to be out coming up this Labor Day weekend, or things like that. You've grew up in Mason County, and the roads around here, I mean, there's not a lot of long straightaway stretches. There are curvy, tight roads, dark corners, It's
very different. I worked here and both worked in Thurston County, and it was interesting when I left here, I always talk about Mason County ditches. You know, on our rural roads, and there's a lot of reasons. I mean, Ryan talked about these collisions. When you look around our county compared to many, there's not a lot of runoff on the roadway before you're in a 4-foot deep ditch on county roads here. And, you know, you've got a fog line and a ditch, where you've got in other places, you've got quite a wide span from that fog line over to a ditched area, and usually it's paved. Here, there's not a lot of run out in those areas, and our roads are very windy here. And many of them, when they were engineered back in the day, they engineered them kind of just because of the geography. You know, there was a place, instead of going through something, you went around it. And so there's a lot of, and because of the waterfront, you know, you can't do a lot when the waterfront is the way it is. So it's very curvy roads and things like that around here. And I'd like to see, you know, we've talked about it here about, like, I don't like these masks because you can't read somebody's facial expressions or whatever it is. But I see in stores where people really go out of their way to say please and thank you and things. I'd like to see people really go out of their way when they're driving to give a little grace to people and to use their best driving technique. And I said, I've heard people say, I do signal. Well, you don't hit the turn signal at the same time you're moving into the lane. You know, give it a few cycles through before you move over, or slow down and let somebody in. I think about over in our county, heading into Thurston County, where you go to 8 and 101 come together. That whole thing over there is a mess, and people trying to cut people off and things over the years when I worked there. You know, it's just be nice. You know, would really help us, and help yourself too. And yes, sometimes on our roads there's very few areas you can safely pass on our county roads. I mean, very few areas where you don't have a little short straight stretch and a bunch of curves. And people try to get through those things, and there's something coming the other way, and it's just you got to slow down.
Yeah. Well, it is darker earlier, it's darker later, and before too long, we're going to be dipping down into the mid-40s, if not lower, during the overnight. So please just be cautious as you're driving out there. Give workers a break when you see them out on the roadways, and give your fellow drivers some space and distance as well. Chief Deputy Spurling, Sheriff Salisbury, good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Jeff.
And the Sheriff Sit Down is presented by our Community Credit Union.
You're listening to Daybreak on iFiber One News Radio.
Good morning to you. Daybreak here continues on this Tuesday morning. Morning, Spencer.
Hey, good morning to you.
And we are getting geared up for tonight's presidential debate. Our coverage starts at 5. Of course, you can listen to Tom Hartman from the left side of the aisle, 9 to noon, and Seb Gorka from the right from noon to 3, both live, and they take calls. And they will be talking, of course, about what's going to happen tonight. And then tomorrow, they'll have the recap and their own point of views as it comes to the debates. This is kind of an interesting story, and I had never heard about this or thought that this ever could have been a thing. But rats are usually known for being pests, but across the world, they oftentimes can be heroes too. According to the LA Times, Spencer, for the first time in history, one of the critters was awarded a British Charities Top Civilian Award for animal bravery for discovering unexploded landmines in Cambodia. This is amazing.
It's amazing. How would you like to be that rat saying, how'd you pick me to do this? Why don't you pick the other guy?
So this is a giant African pouched rat named Magua. It won the People's Dispensary for Sick Animals Gold Medal for life-saving bravery and devotion after unearthing 39 landmines and 28 items of unexploded items in the last 7 years.
That's unbelievable. And I guess it makes sense that the rat doesn't weigh enough to set these things off, right? I mean, you could probably train dogs to do this, but the dog would probably set it off, obviously, and you don't want to lose, an animal. That's pretty incredible.
Not the only rat of its kind, he's the most successful one out of a group of rats trained to clear mines left in countries like Cambodia and Zimbabwe. To date, Magua has cleared over 144,000 square feet, or about 20 soccer fields.
That's unbelievable.
And prior to the rat getting this, it's all been dogs that have collected this award. Isn't that something? So it must sense or smell some of the chemical perhaps in the mine, and it goes to it and starts
It's pretty incredible.
digging a little bit.
I never would have thought, just a little side note, my oldest son had pet rats years ago, and then I got my own couple of pet rats years ago, and I could not believe, you just can't understand until you have them, I think, how intelligent these animals really are. And it's the reason why they experiment on them as often as they do, because their brains are pretty incredible, and their intelligence is pretty incredible. But you can train them to play games. I've seen videos on YouTube where they train pet rats to play basketball. Like they put little basketball hoops on each side of the cage, and they dunk the ball in, and they know how to do things. And they're like little mini dogs, really. So it doesn't totally surprise me. I've just never heard of such a thing where they could clear landmines. That's unbelievable.
It's funny you bring that up. I'm reading The Witches to Kaiser by Roald Dahl.
Yeah.
Witches. It's an old school great book.
Oh, yeah,
Anyways,
classic.
they just got done with the part where the kid was teaching his two white rats or mice or whatever to tightrope walk. So he had the rat on one side with some string and a treat on the other. And I mean, I get it. It's a book, but I can imagine it's the same thing. And they just go right back and forth on that little string.
Yeah, they're pretty incredible creatures. They only live like 3 years, if I remember right, 3 or 4 years. So it's kind of sad. You bond with them like they're a dog, but they live, a fraction of the time. They don't have very long lifespans.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, fun. That's a interesting story that just popped up here on the news desk. iFiber One News Radio. Good morning to you. The Daybreak Show continues on in just a little bit.
Thank you so much for listening to today's Daybreak with Jeff Slakey podcast. Again, I'm so happy and honored you found us and chose to listen. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this with your circle of influence. It's a collection of some of the interviews, news, and conversation during Daybreak with Jeff Slakey on iFiber One News Radio KMAS, weekdays from 6 to 9. Thank you so much again, and talk with you next time.